Athletics. With that, Sean Eichhorst's employment here at the university has ended as of today. Yesterday, President Bounds and I decided to move in a new direction. Today, we met with Sean to let him know about our decision and to thank him for everything that he has done for Husker Athletics. Following that, we met with the coaching staff to let them know we'll be bringing in new leadership for Nebraska athletics to strive for higher levels of competitiveness. Sean has led Nebraska athletics in many positive ways, including higher levels of academic achievement, a dedication to ensuring student athletes have the skills needed to succeed in life, and strong fiscal responsibility for the department. While we deeply appreciate that work and all of his efforts, those efforts have not translated into the on-field excellence that we expect. Our fans and our student athletes deserve leadership that drives the highest levels of competitiveness on the field, as well as excellence across all facets of Husker athletics. The fact of the matter is, we need to raise our on-field competitiveness. Competing at a high level is required for the long-term success of Nebraska athletics. We intend to bring in a new athletic director, certainly to drive that success. We are beginning a targeted search for a new athletic director immediately. We expect a new leader to continue to uphold the athletic department's commitment to our student athletes, to ensure the department continues to be exceptionally well run, and to, as quickly as possible, bring back the level of competitiveness that Husker fans deserve. Let me wrap up by reiterating that we are truly blessed with the greatest fans in the country. I want to thank them for their phenomenal past, present, and even more importantly, future support of our student athletes. We believe that the future for Husker athletics is indeed bright. Now, I know that you're likely to have a number of questions this afternoon, and we'll open up for that here in a few minutes. I'd like to invite President Bounds of the University of Nebraska System to join me as we go into that dialogue. But before we do, I would just like to give you a few details of things that you may want to know. Regarding Sean's contract, Sean is due $1.7 million per his contract, which runs through June of 2019. Regarding the search, we made our decision yesterday to go in a new direction. So the search literally, and I mean literally, opened a few hours ago. We will be reaching out to those knowledgeable about Husker athletics, as well as those who have run successful college programs around the country to gain their perspective. For example, I've already reached out to Coach Tom Osborne and others for that perspective. Regarding what it means to be excellent on the field, I'll reiterate again, we are talking here about competitiveness. Yes, winning is important. Winning can happen and often does in concert with well-run quality college programs that work to ensure the success of our students academically as well. That's our expectation. We take pride in doing things right and doing the right thing, and that will not change here at Nebraska. So I'll stop there and ask if there are questions that we may be able to address and field for you about this.
Ronnie, when you talk about on-field competitiveness, are you talking about, is that a football discussion, or does that encompass other sports too?
We're talking about competitiveness across sports. So as you know, we field a lot of sports in Nebraska athletics, and so we're talking the field generally, certainly as a term, but we're referring across the sports that we compete in for Husker athletics.
Who will be the interim athletic director right now?
We'll be naming an interim athletic director, hopefully in the next couple of days. I'm already engaged in that discussion with some individuals to consider for the interim position.
Some people would question the timing. The Big Ten conference season starts this Saturday. Why make this move right now?
We want to get started. We've got work to do. We want to get started on that work by bringing in the new leader, to address the issues that we referred to here in competitiveness. So we want to get started now.
Are you afraid that this might disrupt the football program in mid-season?
You know, there is, unless you do it in the summertime, there's never a time when we're not competing. And so, obviously, we've had a conversation with Coach Riley. We know that there will be that speculation. We expect the Huskers to compete on Saturday, regardless of where we are in the search process.
Hey, Hank, did the Northern Iowa or the Northern Illinois loss precipitate this discussion, or had you been considering this before Saturday?
So I think it's important to recognize that we expect our players, our coaches to compete. Clearly, the Northern Illinois issue just occurred, and so, I mean, obviously, the folks will make what they will out of that. But as the Chancellor just mentioned, we expect our teams to compete on every playing surface.
So you discussed this before Saturday?
You know, we talk about, Ronnie and I talk about tough issues all the time. We've spent the last year talking about how to make a $49 million budget adjustment. And so you can imagine there are very few days that go by that we don't talk about tough issues.
How secure is Coach Riley's position?
Say that one more time.
How secure is Mike's?
You want me to
Coach?
So Mike Riley is our football coach. We expect them to compete. This is not about Mike Riley right now. We expect him to compete. We expect our players to compete in volleyball and baseball and you name the sport.
Ronnie, you were recently heard praising Sean as a great athletic director. Where did that change if that was recently, just a week ago?
I've been very supportive of Sean for his success with our student athletes. There's no doubt about that. You know, because if you look at the history here and you see what's happened over recent years in that area, in skill development, life skill development, academic development of our athletes, I've certainly supported and applauded Athletic Director Icor's efforts in that area. I mentioned fiscal responsibility a few moments ago, but the issue here is competitiveness.
What's your statement to the athletes going forward from here, knowing that our head athletic director is no longer there?
Our coaches, we met with the coaches earlier this afternoon, all of our head coaches, and talked about this with them. They're all focused on this issue, right? So they're focused on ensuring the success of the students on their teams and the recruitment of students to join their teams, and that's where their emphasis and their expectations are.
Why haven't Nebraska athletics been competitive?
Why haven't they been competitive? I think there are any number of reasons that we may not have been as competitive as we could have been. If you listened carefully to the Chancellor's statement earlier, one of the primary focuses that we will make as we look for the next athletic director is someone that really understands competing in every phase. I'd like just to make a quick statement about Sean and about his leadership ability. You look at graduation rates, you look at life skills, you look at life after college and all the things that have happened there, you couldn't ask for a better job. But competing and those other very important issues aren't mutually exclusive.
What did he understand about on-field competitiveness?
I don't know that I would make the statement that he doesn't understand on-field competitiveness. The fact of the matter is we have not been as successful as I think Nebraskans want us to be.
What role do you expect an AD to play in on-field competitiveness? You can obviously only do so much.
We expect the athletic director to use the resources that we're so fortunate to have and deploy those for the coaches to have the absolute success that we expect in that competitiveness arena. So making use of those resources, deploying those resources, talent, personnel, to be able to be successful.
And you weren't satisfied in that area?
We're not satisfied with the results.
President Bounds, Trev Alberts is going to be a name that a lot of people talk about for the position. Have you talked to Trev, and what is your stance on moving a guy from the department from school to school?
Yeah, so we haven't spoken to anyone. We just had a conversation with Sean Eichhorst this morning. We've had conversations with individuals about an interim role. We will start having conversations immediately with search firms to make certain that we get the right kind of help. And I mean, so when we think about a the next athletic director, we are going to go after the most talented person we can find. And so we're not limiting ourselves to anyone or any place, and at this point, we've not had a conversation with any individual.
You will hire a search firm?
Absolutely.
Yes, we will use a search firm, and we will use a consulting group.
Do you have a timeline in mind for the search?
Well, we obviously want, I use the words as quickly as possible in the statement. We obviously want to move efficiently and as fast as possible, but we're going to take the time to find the right person and the right talent to lead the organization moving forward. So I'm hesitant to say in a number of days, but we're going to move as fast and quickly as possible.
Ronnie, 10 years ago, Nebraska was in the same spot, made an athletic director hire. 5 years ago, they were in the same spot, made an athletic director hire. You guys weren't necessarily part of those discussions and decisions, but what can you take from those experiences? Because a lot of people around you were part of those experiences.
Yeah, so you make a good point. Neither one of us were here for any of those decisions. We can go back and read about what happened. We can look at what happened. We can have conversations with folks who were involved. But at the end of the day, we can't make our decisions based on history. We have to look at a very competitive marketplace. We have to understand that we have the resources to absolutely be competitive. We've got to make certain that we have the talent in the top position to help us get there.
Will Mike Riley's contract extension, the 1 year, still be honored?
Mike Riley signed his contract extension.
Do you see a lack of athleticism or that competitiveness on the field? Do you see that all on Sean's shoulders, or does any of that fall on the coaches and the teams themselves?
Look, the competitiveness is all a shared thing, right? So we have personnel that manage teams and are the motivators for those teams. We absolutely have responsibilities there, but the leader also sets that tone for competitiveness, right? So, sure, it's a shared all responsibility, but the leader sets the tone, and the tone of that competitiveness is what we're looking for.
And let me ask you to think about it in a different way. I think Nebraskans expect us to increase our freshman and sophomore retention rates. I think they expect us to increase our 4-year and 6-year graduation rates. And at the end of the year, although I'm not going to be the only person making that happen, I'm going to be held responsible for that, and I should.
Or else he's going to hold me responsible. One of them.
What balance do you want to strike between your new athletic director with on-the-field success and off-the-field success?
So as I mentioned earlier, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think both of those things can and should happen. In the best programs, that is what happens.
There were some criticisms that Sean wasn't in the public eye enough. How important is it to you for the next AD to be out there more public?
Yeah, well, I think Sean was out a lot too. I don't think it's fair to say that he wasn't out in the public a lot. He was. He was out in the state a lot, and he did make an effort and do that as well. But we expect the leader to be out in the public. We expect the leader to also represent Husker athletics. I think our fans expect that, right? So we're going to look for a leader that also will represent Husker athletics to the greater world of Nebraska and our fan base.
Last week there was an announcement on Tuesday that Nebraska was going to embrace playing its final game of the year on Saturdays. By Thursday, Athletic Director Eichhorst, former Athletic Director Eichhorst, had completely reversed his stance, calling it a clarification. What happened last week?
Well, so the Black Fridays issue, right, playing on the Thanksgiving Friday, is an important thing to our fan base. It's a longstanding tradition in Husker athletics and for our fans. The Big Ten conference schedules that were released for 2020 and 2021 had some change in that you're referring to, Sam. So we understand the importance of that tradition, right? And the setting of those dates in that final analysis, in that case with Minnesota, for example, we reinforced the desire for that to be a tradition for us. And we've been working with, even in latest communications, I know Sean has had communications with Minnesota about that. So we intend to move that forward.
And I think it's also fair to point out that Sean said that he wasn't clear in his communication. Clearly, we asked him to be clear in his communication.
Did the tenor of the feedback that you've been hearing from whether community members or program supporters change significantly over the last 3 weeks?
Well, I don't mean to be glib about it. I'm married to a fourth-generation Nebraskan who is, like myself, a huge fan, right? And I hear from Husker fans all the time. Hank hears from Husker fans all the time. We have a passionate fan base. They care deeply about all of the sports, I would say, we field, right? And we're very fortunate to have that fan base. Did we see an uptick here over the last several weeks? Sure. Sure, we've seen an uptick in people that are contacting us, sharing their thoughts. But we hear from people all the time. I just can't reinforce that enough.
But in complete candor, we would be more worried if we didn't have an uptick after a disappointing loss. Mike said it's been, I think everyone has recognized that the loss last week was disappointing.
Chancellor, will the next athletic director be the sole decision maker on the status of the football staff?
So the question was, will the next?
Are you going to leave it to the next athletic
Yeah. I was just going to repeat the question. So it's the next AD. Would they have the sole responsibility for decisions around football staff? They certainly will recommend. Just like in our process works. They recommend to us. We have to approve those hires as well, but we certainly expect them to make those choices and bring forward good recommendations.
So same on dismissal? I mean, is that a sole decision of the athletic director if you choose to dismiss a coach?
We still approve. That's correct.
And so we have a process.
Was that a factor, knowing that there's 2 months left in the football season and you probably need to have an AD in place to assess the program at that time?
No, I wouldn't. No. I said earlier that the decision for the timing now and making this change now was to move forward now and be able to move the leadership forward now, and we wanted that time to do that. So, that's where the decision was based.
What's an ideal way to measure competitiveness? How do you measure that, and how will you measure it going forward?
I'm having a hard time hearing. I'm sorry.
What is the ideal way to measure on-field competitiveness? How will you measure that now? How will you measure it going forward?
So clearly the best, most objective way is in wins and losses. But there are differences in wins and losses. There are programs that we compete with that we should compete with, and there are programs where we are, some of the. Not everybody can win every game at the end of the day, but we expect to be in every game and compete in every game. And some of that is subjective, and the wins and losses are obviously objective, and that's where all of us get together and talk about where we are, the kind of progress that we're making, what things look like, how we move to the next level. We want to make certain that every one of our programs is the kind of program, both from a graduation rate perspective, our student athletes in terms of how they represent our university perspective, but also, the thing that gets people excited is being competitive. And you can be competitive and not win every game.
How concerned are you about the perception this may send out to the rest of the country, especially to recruits that might be thinking about coming here, about the stability of your programs?
Go ahead.
I think the message that we're trying to send is that we want to build that strength and stability of the program moving forward beyond where we are. We're going to have visitors here this weekend, important visitors and recruits here this weekend that we're going to be selling the program to and working hard to show them the resources, show them, most importantly, the fan base that we have and the support in that fan base that we have, and the importance of that to recruits. So it's, that we're trying to actually move, closer to that level of competitive stability where we want to be. Hank, I don't know if you want to add there.
I think it's...
Chancellor, when you talk about competitiveness, can you quantify how much of that is football? I mean, everyone thinks the timing of this is related to football. quantify how much of it is football and how much of it is across the board competitiveness in all the sports?
Look, we all know the importance of football in Husker athletics. There's no reason to debate that, right? We know the importance of it, that we know the importance of it to our brand. The expectations associated with Husker football are high, should be high, always high. But with that said, we also expect excellence in baseball. We also expect excellence in basketball, men's and women's basketball. We expect excellence in track and field. We expect excellence in gymnastics and volleyball. You go down the list. You know, our fans support all of those sports, and they support them emotionally, and they support them with their presence. So when we say all sports, we're really extending that across beyond just Husker football.
Ronnie, when you looked into the morale of the department under Sean, what did you find?
So that was actually me that conducted that study. The overwhelming return was that there was a positive level of support for Sean. We said that at the time. I don't have any sense that has changed. There will be days of follow-up questions about that, and days of follow-up questions about why 3 weeks in, and follow-up questions. But the answer is going to be the same. We want to compete. We want to be competitive. We want our fans to know that we intend to compete, and we're going to figure that out.
Did you know Sean Eichhorst would address the media after Saturday's game, and what were your thoughts on that?
I was asked about that earlier this week as well, and no, we did not know, or Sean didn't talk to me directly about that or have any conversations about it. That was his choice. He chose to do so. No, we did not know.
You talked about important people coming this weekend and recruits coming this weekend. What's your message to recruits coming into a program that right now doesn't have a leader set in place?
We're investing in the future, and we're going to be competitive here, and we are going to make that happen and not be constrained by how we invest in making that happen.
And at the end of the day, change happens every day. Look across the sports world. There are changes all the time that are occurring. And there will be those that try to make a lot out of this. But again, I'm going to keep coming back to the primary point. This is about competing in the future. And I think recruits buy into being a part of a program where, number one, you're going to graduate in 4 years, and number two, you're going to be competitive regardless of the sport that you come here in.
Hey, Hank, in the survey there was a couple of 3 paragraphs about qualifications of the executive staff that Sean had put together. Did you have concerns about the talent level that's strata in the athletic department?
I do not have concerns.
I have one last question. When was the last time Nebraska was competitive? And I know you haven't been here that long, but Ronnie, you've been here long enough to be able to say, since you guys are focused on that, when do you feel like is a time in which Nebraska needs to return to in order to experience the kind of competitiveness that you guys are looking for? This is going to sound a little glib, and I don't mean it that way, but I'd love to be back in the mid-1990s, right? So I don't need to say more, Sam.
And the truth of the matter is, why not? Why shouldn't we have those aspirations here?
What involvement and role do you want Tom Osborne to have in the future? I mean, there was kind of a notion that he was pushed out the way Sean was brought in. I mean, what's kind of the theory now with Coach Osborne and his involvement?
Look, Coach Osborne has had a huge impact. We all recognize his presence, his stature, what he's done for Nebraska athletics, his service in Congress. We could go on and on about Tom. Tom has certainly been a valuable resource for us all along the way, right? I'll say that first. I am going to rely and visit with Coach Osborne. I mentioned in my remarks that I've already reached out. I've got a personal relationship with him. I know him well, and I will, seek his counsel. He knows a tremendous amount about this world and this field. So I'm going to have him as a consultant on the side with me in this process, along with a number of others as well that be part of that search process.